thank you for joining us. Those that are in the room and those that are online, for the Teviot Valley Community Board meeting Thursday, 1 May 2025. We have an apology from Sally Fineman. Do I move? Yeah, and I move that we accept Sally's apology, and kind of a second of that, please.
I'll second that.
All those in favour say aye. Those against say nay. Carry. We've got on our agenda today, we've got one speaker in our public forum, and we have 4 papers to this, 4 reports to discuss. So there's a bit of activity happening here today. And I'd just like to welcome Shona. Come join us at the end of the table. And you've got 5 minutes as the rules go, and then we can have some question and Q&A.
Okay. Hi, well, I'm Shona Denton, and I've lived in town for a few years now. And it's come to my attention around my community, and I think all the board's seen the letter that went round Teviot Street. No? Right, okay, well, I shall read it to you, and I have some copies here that you probably have. Right, so. To whom it may concern, we the residents and homeowners of Teviot Street, Roxburgh and the surrounding streets respectfully request the relocation of the sewage dump facilities currently situated on Teviot Street. We believe the site is inappropriate due to its close proximity to residential properties and community amenities. The facility is located at the entrance to Grover's Hill Walkway, a recently upgraded public walkway that has become a treated recreational area for both locals and visitors. As a quiet residential area, Teviot Street is not designed to accommodate the large volume and size of vehicles, such as camper vans and caravans, that regularly access the dump site. Their presence often leads to congestion, with vehicles obstructing driveways and restricting access for residents and emergency services. Moreover, the influx of large vehicles has created significant safety risks for pedestrians, cyclists, and particularly for children in the area. Adjacent to the dump site is a youth facility and a building used for community purposes. The presence of a sewage dump facility or any waste management facility so close to these important community resources is inappropriate and concerning. There is also an unsightly and growing stain on the road from runoff associated with the site, and residents frequently report a strong, unpleasant odour emanating from the dumped waste. These issues not only affect our enjoyment of our homes and streets, but also raise legitimate health and safety concerns. Additionally, we are deeply concerned about the potential negative impact this facility is having on our property values. In many other areas of Central Otago, campervan waste disposal facilities are located in industrial zones where they are more appropriate and accessible to larger vehicles without disrupting residential communities. We urge the responsible authorities to consider relocating the Teviot Street dump station to a more suitable site away from homes, community spaces and recreational areas. So that's the basis of our request.
Okay,
I thought you guys would have been given the.
I've seen that letter.
Yeah, no, just resent it this morning.
You've just read it.
So for me, that sparks I guess, an action from CODC or council and us. How do we go forward from here in terms of, I guess, investigating the causes of the issues that are raised in that? Yeah, letter. I mean, we've got to respond. We need to formulate a response.
What's that, sorry?
Oh, sorry, behind you. Kieran can offer a response.
I'm curious about the planning and policy manager for the waters units. First of all, like the knowledge your complaint and the concerns that you raised. and we will certainly investigate potential alternative locations. We do have to acknowledge that, first of all, I'll be looking into the records within council to see why that specific location was chosen at the time. I believe it's been there, and I'm not hopeful that we will get a suitable record that actually explains why that location.
I can tell you why it's here.
If so if we're talking industrial areas, Roxburgh doesn't really have an industrial area, so it does make it difficult finding a suitable location. And we will certainly investigate further options and compare that with the existing location and get back to this board.
Cool. I mean, and that's what that's how this whole thing was.
Yeah,
Agrees.
yes, and I mean, what I've done in terms of this letter and other people who have spoken to me is I've followed the council procedures here in terms of if we are requesting removal of a waste station.
Yeah.
So this is from you guys, this is what you guys have got out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically this is just a start.
Yeah.
But it is a historic location because there was a camping ground there. And it was also the old borough workshop when there was a borough workshop. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so when that was removed,
Yeah.
there was still access to the sewer there, so they decided that would be a good place to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that, I mean, traditionally, historically, that's why it's there. Yeah,
That's,
Yeah.
but I know the sewer line must go over to, and the second goes over there, the town.
yes, but that's,
And-
you see, that's a rising mine. We can't connect a gravity mine into a rising mine. So there are certain practical and functional issues that we.
Yeah, remove it. Hey, so way.
That's.
So that's somewhere where gravity will feed into the sewer, not
Yes.
onto the road. Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean, it's an interesting question because to my mind, we're what I term as a host community. And it's one of the services that people expect us to provide, but it is a cost to the ratepayer, and the ratepayers don't actually use it.
that's right, and there's been.
And so the
comments
question to
from
me
that.
is,
Yes.
why do we have one?
I understand the need for one. I also know, subsequent to this, that a lot of those big motorhomes camp out over at the racecourse.
Yeah.
And actually don't want to have to come back, I hear, don't want to have to come back into town.
Yeah.
Because it's quite convoluted around there to get over the bridge and round the corner and round the corner. Yeah. So, I mean, there is move ahead from those people to potentially want it somewhere else. And the Motorhome Association will provide systems and funding and that sort of thing.
Unfortunately, we don't have reticulated gravity sewer on the other side of the,
So how does our food get over there?
that gets pumped.
Okay, so we'll talk a bit more.
We're going to investigate it anyway, Shane.
What's that?
We will investigate.
That would be lovely. Thank you very much. Yes,
That's, it won't happen overnight, but.
well, I understand.
just
But with all the work done on that walkway,
Hope the
which
best.
I take my hat off to everybody, I mean, it is very nice and it certainly makes access for a lot of other people easier than the way it was. But people don't want to walk through somebody dumping their poos on their way to go for a walk.
No,
You don't want it at the end of your drive, either.
Well, I don't want it at the end of my drive, but I'm not impacted by the smell. I'm impacted by access because that is my legal access. And other people get more impacted because of the smell and the congestion on the road, especially now that we have new houses down where Kyle has built. They have a lot of grandchildren who come about and bicycles, and so, yeah, there are, I think, legitimate concerns. Yeah.
I understand that.
Thank you.
right, thank you.
So, been heard?
And
What do
we will
you
get back,
need?
we will get back to you.
Do you need this
No,
letter?
no, seriously.
Got it, all right, so, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
For me, that's all good. Right. See you later.
See you later.
I hope everybody's enjoyed the walk.
Thanks very much.
See you later.
Yeah.
No one else in the public. Okay, thank you for those that contributed to that discussion. So next item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. I just assume that they have been read and move that they are accepted as a true and accurate record of our meeting on the 20th of March, 2025. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Curtis. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Carried. Declarations of interest. Just remind you once again that if you have not completed the declarations of interest, please do so with a degree of urgency. And if you have any concerns about matters on the agenda today, to raise them now. Personally, I have with item 25.3.3, my involvement in the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre Committee. I was just notified that I'm involved with that, and we are going to be talking about the passing of a grant that the RESIP group received for some lighting boxes, which is no longer appropriate for us to use, or we've got no need for them, and we've decided that it would be good if we could pass it on to the people that are looking to place flags along the main street. So we'll talk about that further, but I'm just raising that as an issue.
The liaison for that between, is that a conflict of interest? Because I'm on the committee as.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's, I'm just letting people know from my perspective, and we've just done the same, and if there's anyone's got an objection to
What is
it.
your role? I just liaise between the entertainment centre and the community board.
It's also delegated.
Yeah. That's not classed as conflict, is it? No.
It's a passing of a grant rather than any major decision. Anyone else got anything they want to raise in that? Okay. So moving on. The first item on the agenda is 25.3.2. Roxburgh Entertainment Centre External Group. The formation of and the proposed terms of reference. We have Beth and Gareth. Morning. And David.
Yeah, I'll join today.
So, morning all. Firstly, to take the report as released. We're here today to ask this board to consider a recommendation for the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre rebuild, to proceed with an appointed steering group and a project structure that's on page 2.
Yeah, can we put that structure on? Sorry. It's on there.
That's a good idea.
So everyone can see it.
And I think if we go through a little bit of we just cast our eyes back 6 weeks ago, we sort of had a, an informal workshop with the board talking about next steps and what that could look like.
Yeah.
And the idea of this report is to sort of solidify and find resolution on the steering group. That's one of the key bits of direction that came out of this board in that workshop. So I guess here we are today based on that workshop 6 weeks ago.
Good.
You might actually have good glasses on. That's but the personalised version. And both are nice.
Well, I guess, can you all see that, back? Well, you can come sit up here if you wish.
Copy of the agenda there, something.
So there's two parts to the discussion that you want to have, and this one is about this, and the other is an adoption of it. And the other is about the terms of reference.
Yeah. Yeah, so you'll see the project structure, we've got the council, then the Teviot Gallery Community Board, and then sitting alongside that is the project sponsor, business owner, the steering group will feed into it, and then close down from there.
So, I've got a question. In F, you said the steering group comprises project sponsor, business owner, project manager, board members. But the steering group is on the right-hand side there, and those other parties.
So that's the representation. So you can see if you're coming down, this is the standard flow diagram. Project sponsor and the business owner, which is myself.
Yeah, get that.
Have the steering group, and then that all feeds into the project manager because.
Yeah, get that. But
Yeah.
you said the steering group comprises, and then,
Those people.
Yeah.
so those people are all on the steering group.
Correct.
So you're the business owner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And my role's the GM of community experience.
right,
So in council, any major projects that happen, an executive gets assigned sponsorship of the project. And so given this as would be a property project, it comes under my portfolio. So essentially Peter, the CEO, would hold me accountable to make sure that it does what it say it's going to do. Yeah.
So, that's interest to them. Because we've got 1, 2, 3 people from CODC.
Yeah.
Sitting in here.
Correct.
Okay. We've got the community board, we've got council. At what level are decisions made? Investment decisions. Basically.
So according to the delegations from 1 July, council is the ultimate decision maker when it comes to, ticking things off and spending money. That sits at council. However, the proposal here with the steering group is that we would be feeding the information into the council about what the steering group would ideally like. And then that would come via the community board to make sure that you guys were happy with it, the overall community board, and then approval for council to, adopt or resolve or what have you.
Yes.
Essentially.
So the process will be, the stakeholder, like the community, will feed into here. And then the steering group will feed that back through through the board.
Yep. And that can be done through staff.
Recommendations are made to
Yeah.
council
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
So
design what it looks like, what's involved in it.
But the stakeholder group's not mentioned in here.
so just for the interest sake of recording, could you explain what stakeholders are?
So I think you might be getting a little caught up in different wording and technicalities. Essentially, your steering group is your stakeholders. Your representatives of the stakeholders
And your stakeholders are your
to
community.
be determined who they
So who are the
might be,
stakeholders?
to be determined by the community.
Well, they are community. In this community, but you want
The names of those people has to be determined by the community, put forward to be part of the steering group.
Okay.
So if I can use an example, when we did the build for the Cromwell Memorial Hall, we had primary users of the hall, right? So it was Fine Time Theatre, the RSA, obviously prominent members there, and some other groups. Those are the groups that we got representatives from to sit on our, we just had a different name, Project Advisory Group, right?
Yeah.
So it was a member from, 2 members from the board, and then those were the external stakeholder groups that were feeding into the project advisory group, and that came up with the overall concept and design for the memorial board.
Yeah.
And that fed into the board, which ultimately fed into council. So it's exactly the same project structure. We've just worded it a little bit differently because the project advisory group seemed to get a bit of a misunderstanding. So I've gone back to traditional project, management structures.
Yeah.
And the steering group is part of it.
So, I mean, key thing is that community is represented here, community is represented here. And it's up to this group to, I guess, capture and collate what the community's input.
Correct.
To, so.
And then ultimately.
The function of this, of the
Yeah.
steering group.
Correct. And then ultimately, council as staff, we facilitate that process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you're sitting on the.
Correct.
So there's plenty of opportunity for input to be, I guess, extracted from the community.
Well, 100%. So let's say, for example, let's say Mark was elected onto the steering group as an alderman, right? And he represented whatever part of the community. They get to feed into Mark all the different ideas and everything else. Mark then brings that back to the steering group. That's what gets discussed. We then decide what is in scope and what's out of scope. And the reason we do that is because we're constrained by the insurance, right? So and I use a stupid example, but a rooftop swimming pool is not going to be part of the scope, correct? So if those ideas coming in from that, that would be taken as out of scope, and we just go with what is in scope, and those would be the ideas that float.
Yeah.
So who proposes the design?
Well, effectively what happens is there's some very clever people out there, designers and architects. We feed in ideas, they take all those ideas, and then they come up with it.
So who's the we? You say we feed in ideas, who's the we?
The community, well, effectively the steering group.
So with the feedback that I've had is that people in the community want to be very, involved in the rebuild, and they sort of think that this is it's going to be the council that's going to be doing it. So that's got to be allayed a little bit, because if it's going to be viewed as this council rebuild and the council has control of it, you're not going to have as much money coming through in donations and fundraising and stuff like that, because people don't view it as theirs. And
The structure.
and that's
The whole point of the steering group.
yeah, okay. So but that's something that the community needs to know. They need to be aware of that.
And this is why we set up a structure like this, is so that we can involve the community. But what we do need to be clear of, and the reason we set terms of reference as well, is because if you've got 150 people around a table trying to make a decision, it's not going to happen, right? So we bring it down to a tighter group that we can control. So you still get to liaise with the community as much as you want. Those ideas come back, the feedback, and then we can even feedback on the feedback. But effectively, once we collate all that information, that goes fed into an architect or a designer, and then a concept comes out of that. That concept then gets distributed as well, and then everyone goes, wow, that's amazing, or actually, that's not what we were requesting, and we try and find more of it.
So to be clear, so who in the first place says we want this and this and this and that included, and we don't want that included? Who says that in the first place?
Well, that's dictated by the insurance. So effectively, the building, what was ever in the building, we replaced in like for like. Now, we've got a little bit of room on like for like. So we don't have to, and this is what I used at the workshop as an example, we don't have to replace a 250-seater cinema. It could be bespoke down to a 50-seater or a 60-seater, right? But it's got to have the same sort of function that was in the original form. And of course, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. We still haven't had the result out of the insurance company yet, and there's still a little bit of debate going back and forth. So we're still waiting for those where they come back and say, this is the amount of money you're getting, and these are the constraints applied to you.
Yeah, but
I
mean, they're not going to say you can't have an entertainment centre, are they?
No.
But I presume they might say, if we said we want to make that a shopping mall now, they'd say no.
Correct.
So somewhere in between that, there's a grey area. And so who determines what, where's the point that you cross? Who determines that?
So wait for insurance to go.
That's the insurance piece.
Because the group might come up, for example, and say, we want to have a cafe in there.
But that
Well, who
would be-
determines whether
that- Well, that would be, in my mind, that would be associated with the same sort of,
Okay, yeah, often,
It's not wildly different from.
yeah.
It's
yeah, you're not building an airport, for example.
Yeah.
So how close to having the insurance issue resolved? Because I see in this report you've engaged a quantity survey to confirm.
So the QS has done his job. The insurance underwriters have now asked a few questions of the
Right,
Q.
so, okay.
But because of
So we're
Easter,
near the end of that
yeah,
process.
yeah, because of Easter, we've had a few people going away, so it's been delayed slightly. We're hoping to get a result back from that next week.
Yeah, can you disclose what the queue is?
No, because we don't know.
Oh, you haven't had it yet.
Once we get that report, we'll assess it. If I'm not happy with it,
Yeah.
we will get an independent QS.
Right,
Right, so I want to get maximum bang for buck.
yes, yeah. So what, sorry, what if, say, for example, the QS comes back and insurance is sorted in and it's for the full amount, but the community, and the steering group decide that we would like to fundraise for something a bit more than what the payment is.
It's an add-on. So
Right,
if you,
yeah,
if you're adding more money into it, the money that from insurance will be, earmarked for that activity.
Yeah.
If you're extending that activity and it's done through separate finance, no issues.
right, okay.
So insurance is quite happy to pay out even though there's no known cause of the fire.
That's the way they,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the way they work. So they've had all the investigators in there, and unfortunately, the fire was so devastating, they couldn't find the cause.
Get a timeline for the insurance.
No, I know we're getting towards the end of it, but I cannot actually say it'll be done by such and such a date.
We can keep giving regular updates. to
Yeah.
the board every 6 weeks and how we're tracking, but I mean, to Garen's point, I guess we're at that point now where the majority of information is nearly done from
Yeah.
probably next week. And then it comes into sort of negotiations as part of insurance, so,
So,
yeah.
so I say the next steps recommended, from here is that we form the, like after, if the board approved the recommendations today, that the next steps are that we'll form the steering group and, populate the steering group.
Yeah.
How do you see that happening? Are you guys going to facilitate that, or the board facilitating that, or?
So much as to me, if you would like council to facilitate that, we'd be happy to do that, but effectively it's a community function.
Yeah.
So we prefer it to be board led, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's a question
Yeah.
actually just after what Jill was saying,
Yeah.
if the community want to see it as something they're part of,
Yeah,
then, you know, probably the advice would be that the board consider how the best cross-section of the community could be represented on here.
okay.
So going back to the makeup, just to clarify on this report, we start at the bottom of page 16, you have, considered members of the following groups would have knowledge and ideas they can contribute to the project, and you got 4 bullet points with suggested members. And then if I go down to page 17, you include the Teviot Valley Community Board with the council, and then you say recommended members plus 4.
Yeah.
But up on 16, 17, you've got the Teviot Valley Community, so does that mean you've got 2 people from the community board on the steering group? If you follow, because
Because then they feed back into the full board anyway. So
yes,
one-
yeah, no, I get that, but it's just you've listed recommended people from the community, but then down on page 17, you've said the steering group will comprise the sponsor, owner, project manager, and a member of the Teviot Valley Community Board, and then recommended members.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, the recommendation of the individual members of that board, sorry, the steering group.
Yeah.
And
So you've also said recommended members could also be community board.
Well, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, so that 4 recommended members doesn't have to include a community board member because you've already made room
We've
for
already
them.
made room for
Right.
it. Yeah.
That's what I've just established.
Yeah.
One,
Good.
like Norm said, we're going to be making decisions around this today, and I'll be straight up about this. I'm comfortable about making decisions about this today because I think I really do think we need to have this meeting again at night. It is 10 o'clock on a Thursday and nearly everybody's at work, you know, and the community needs to be able to engage with the board, you know, in a setting like this.
So the workshop that's what we suggested was you guys have an alternate meeting with your community.
No, but we need the council, you know, we need you guys, there, you know, don't like to run it on, along the lines of a community board meeting, but let them, you know, because you're not going to get that many people here.
So what we're being asked to do is to stand up the steering group, and then that meeting would be to populate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I reckon we should have this meeting so that, you know, a night meeting like this, so that, so everybody can go through this
But they will,
once.
we establish that this is the.
So- This is just providing a structure for us to operate.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's really the best place to start is to go, okay, does this board want a structure, yes or no? And it sounds like
Yes.
And then once you've got to that yes, then maybe have your nighttime meeting going, hey, we think this is the best way forward. We would like 4 or whatever from the community who are part of that group. How can we best represent that?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the point of today is to go, do you want a stakeholder group or not?
That's exactly right.
And I was just going to add, any delays at any point in the project ultimately end up costing more money.
Which is also in the terms of references that we are operating in a timely manner.
Which is why we bring it into a Title 7, because when you've got 6 or 7 people around the table, you can get to a decision process, as you can see with this board, right? Whereas if you've got hundreds of people, it becomes difficult.
And we've got examples in our own district about some projects taking 20 years, and I'm pretty sure this community doesn't want that, you know.
So that's strong.
And to be fair, one of the reasons we haven't had that nighttime meeting, Jill, is we were going to tack it on to a long-term plan evening, but we decided we didn't want to muddy the waters between the two.
Right, yeah.
So that was after the last community board meeting from memory was.
Yeah.
Line.
Yeah,
We're
no,
gonna go down
yeah, I
and
remember
decide
that, yeah.
against it.
But, you know, the sooner the community is invited to a meeting at a time that they can get to, the better.
We may even have more than one meeting.
Well, but we
But
need our,
the idea is
we
to
need
make
our
it
initial meeting quite
to expedite
soon.
Okay, so
Is there room for question, is there room to, on this recommendation, and I realise it won't be done today, but can there be an amendment to have the group populated by a certain date? So that we're not forever holding.
You could add something to that.
Can we add today? I don't know, is it something?
The board notes the goal of having this sort of within the next 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Or what do people think? I was just airing the thought.
I think that's going to be a critical part.
Yeah.
Setting milestone dates is
Yeah.
one of the things.
Because we could hold
everybody's gonna
community
have to
meetings,
do.
we could hold community meetings for
Yeah,
2 months and still not have the thing filled.
yeah, so we can do that.
First of May, what timeline would you like to see, Curtis?
Oh, I would think a month.
Arbitrarily, I'd say the 1st of August.
3 months for the steering
3
group.
months. 3 months, 3 months.
2 months for the 2, yeah.
Well, these guys haven't got their clearance from the insurance company.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But, do you want a timeline for your first public meeting?
In May, it would need to be in May. I'm not here
That would be something that you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sort out.
so staff can be there to support, provide facts and information, but it would be something that the community board would have to run and lead and coordinate.
So it wouldn't be a community board meeting as such,
No.
it would be it would be
It's a public, like community together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can use this information and stuff as well.
Yep, and staff will be there to support that with the information.
So do you want to talk us through the terms of reference? Sorry.
Insurance, I think so, it's true and revenue and controversies. I'm in 30 people feel free to stay. They can go through their insurance. We're not looking at it. Because the process, say, it comes in less than what we've been mentioning. There is a process where we can get our own independent valuer to come in. So if we're happy with it, that's all good. It should be relatively soon. But if we look at it and there and take it out, no, they're undercharging us. There is a process that we can then engage. So I think in terms of your decision making, you can definitely set up a steering group and start looking for how you're going to work this project, independent of waiting a few for the insurance. Just in case it takes a few months, we wouldn't want to delay it for that basis.
Now, I think off the back end of that steering group, but if you are getting some conversation in the community, having some people in the steering group that are a little bit more in the know locally all the time might be able to answer some of those questions, even if it's about insurance and things like that.
Yeah.
Then at least you've got a few more people in the community on the ground connected to these groups.
And it always takes a while for a group to find its speed, right? And figure out how it's going to work together and things like that. So actually, the sooner you can start bringing those people, put them together, the better.
So does that sort of like, so a local man, his son is an architect that did the pool. Okay, and another guy whose son is a talented draftsman. Like, do we have to, are we allowed to appoint an architect or a draftsman, or is that council's?
The council ultimately.
I mean, that's what open process.
It's a tender process.
Yeah, tender process, okay, yeah.
And there's a whole evaluation thing in there, and some of it is like there's weight to put on like local suppliers and things like that. So,
But if you have someone like that in your community, they might want to be part of the steering group. Yeah.
But that's the thing,
does
trying
run the risk
to.
of them not being able to tender though, because they have a conflict.
They can have them properly.
Yeah. But their expertise could be really valuable in this area.
Just found that using a very good draftsman for a start cuts down on your architecture fees by heaps, by lots and lots. You know, and maybe a talented draftsman would be a way to go for a start, rather than having an architect draw up 2 or 3 plans, a couple of options, whatever.
So that's sort of the stuff that we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. Right, so the terms of reference. These are the same terms of reference that you've used for the problem.
Yeah.
And okay.
No, they were existing project that I got involved in, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but look, I'm gonna give you a quick summary, literally, write this document, but the quick summary is it's about good business ethics.
Yeah.
So it's about momentum in keeping a project moving forward.
Yeah.
It's about responsibilities of the chairperson who's running it to keep the momentum moving forward. It does talk a little bit about someone being disruptive or whatever. Then there's a mechanism to exit them out of that group if they're not being, contributing positive. So in a nutshell, that's what the chairman is, covers. And you guys are welcome to read that, come back to us. If you want to make some amendments, we'll just make sure that we're not contradicting ourselves in those amendments. We'll be happy.
So you're asking for us today to agree to the structure and agree to a terms of reference or these terms of reference?
A term of reference.
Right.
Which we could use this one as the starting point.
Can be amended.
Yeah.
So have you guys got any more questions?
I think the key thing is the size of the group, of the group. Because, you might find that you've got 2 or 3 really significantly capable people who are technically capable and professionally capable. And then you've got some other people that are very passionate about it and have a history and community history. All of a sudden you've got 6. How do you work that out?
You got to pick a representative. You like I said to you, I mean, this could get bigger than being here, right? And you get about 100 people in this group. You've got to be selected, and you've got to say who represents that part of the community. And we need to keep the group really tight.
Because you don't want to, I mean, you've got to tread that fine line. You don't want a popularity contest to determine who's on that committee.
No, I mean, this is about someone serving the community and they're getting their viewpoints across, because that's what you're representing, right? So if there was guys with a lot of technical stuff, they could be represented by one, and then that person could feed in some of their feedback.
And that's the call of this board when we, I guess, have the first community meeting or workshop about it, is that we put that point across. But that it's not a popularity competition, it's.
And you will be signing a term of reference document, right?
Yeah,
Because you have a responsibility when you're on the steering group.
It's up to us to decide the size of that group.
Well, with all due respect, I think our recommendation is the right size. And if you're going to skew that line, we're going to end up doing the 20-year project, to be clear.
Yeah, that's the risk, yeah.
So you choose from your expertise. So like, for example, you'd get people who know how a hall kitchen works. Somebody with acoustics.
Not necessarily. When we set up the project and how we go about this, because you can use a design build scenario where you can get an architect in, but they bring those expertise into the room. So with the Memorial Hall, we've got guys out of Australia that were running the acoustics and the sound systems for the auditorium. These guys are world renowned, right? And those are the expertise they're bringing in. So you don't need to fill the expertise from this group. This group needs to fill their wants and their wishes. What can we get out of this and get best bang for buck? So expertise, don't worry about it. We've got you covered.
Exactly. Okay, so anyone got any more questions before we move on?
Were we going to put a date on
A date on,
Can add that into the resolution.
The new steering group.
oh yeah, the formation of the steering group by the 31st of July or 1st of August. We've got the objections to that date.
We've got a community board meeting on the 31st of July as a matter of interest.
We have?
Yeah.
Okay, so it just makes sense and we'll line up.
Makes sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you want it before
So you
then?
could then name your members.
Yeah, so you're probably knowing timetables for papers, if there's a paper to you want it beforehand, want it prior, like 2 weeks prior.
Okay.
Or you could table the names of the day.
Or you could, sorry.
So-
But then you're still not wrapping it up on the day.
Well, you are, because then you've named the steering group.
You have,
That's it.
right, okay. But then, can you approve that group on the same day?
100%.
Maybe the resolution is at the 31st or whatever day it was, of July, the community board to confirm the steering group.
Yeah.
And then it'll have to be locked in, I think,
Yeah.
whether it's in a paper or verbal.
Yeah.
Is that what it's?
You could just to make sure the dates there, could be notes the goal of having a steering group formed by end of July, because the previous things, what we're doing here is we're packaging all of this up as a board and we're taking this all as a recommendation to council, so council can go, yeah, off you go, or have their say on it as well. So part of the process is, this is going to be the first time we run through the process.
Yeah.
That we form all of this, we recommend, hey, the council, the community board would like to do this. And the council go, okay, great, or hey, with those questions and
With the members of the group, like council, when we put the group forward, do they then?
they might give the delegation to the board to approve the members of the group
Right,
in the resolution.
so that would mean you'd want a paper earlier.
We would probably take this paper, if you guys recommend to council there's a steering group, we would try and get it to the next council meeting to go,
Yes,
hey,
But sorry, if council delegated their authority to us to approve the members of the steering group, we would have to have a paper 2 weeks before our.
Yeah.
So we couldn't decide on the day.
yes, that they have to say, yeah, thumbs up.
Yes, so we have to go,
Yeah.
so the deadline's actually.
Tight.
The people could still be named on the day.
Oh, yeah, they've got-
The paper would have to be written.
Yeah.
But the people could be named.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So whose job is it to write the paper?
We right.
Are you
I think I'm in the royal we. Yeah.
Bets.
So it's tight, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the 31st of July is very tight. That is going through all the processes up and down for us. So
And we want gold in 3 years. So,
yeah, that's right. The whole thing's
you know,
tight.
so let's get on.
No,
Yeah.
20-year project, so.
So you're saying yes to the 31st of July or, okay.
Well, you're giving us that direction.
Yeah.
It's the boards,
But
you guys are
it's
just.
workable for you as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a goal.
Yeah.
So I moved in that we follow the recommendations made. There was A, B, C, D, and E. Got a seconder for that, please?
Yeah.
All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Hmm?
Down here.
You can stay there if you wish. Okay, the next item on the agenda. Item 25.3.3. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Item 25.5.3. Lost your page. Dylan's going to talk to us about the.
So this paper is a request to change the project funding from the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre Improvements and Promotions Committee. As you'll recall, previously the board had approved through the promotions grant the money or a grant to be spent on a light box for the frontage of the entertainment centre. Clearly, that's currently no longer required. So the request from the committee is that the money be reallocated and put towards developing some street banners. The same amount of money, roughly, they estimate will secure about 20 flags. That is it. Any questions?
2000, what's that?
The gun 2009-16. And the flags, they received a quote a while ago, so it would have to be updated. So these are approximate, but the number was about $140 per flag. So it's about 20 bucks.
So just a question, do we need 20 flags? Can we possibly go down to 10 and then maybe like with the, although we haven't got a hall to do it this year, but Christmas lights are sorely lacking. Do we need 20 flags?
I think
From
they're
one
looking
end
to
to the
populate all the flag holes that we've got. And whether it's 12, 15 or 20, I'm not sure. But the group,
Well, the idea was that some of them might rotate and they'll give
Yeah, there
them,
were two sets.
yeah.
That they would-
Okay,
Yeah, so
Two different designs.
yes, yeah, correct. Sorry. should have-
when the flag project's been on the go for quite some time, there's been a member of the community came and spoke to this board, I think it was, and Todd, do you refer to me? Might have been the previous.
Yeah,
board.
previous board.
Was he offered to pay for one flag himself and just to get the project going.
get going,
So
right.
there's a lot of interest.
Are we going to use that design then? I mean, how does
Karen.
it design?
We've had a chat with some potential, with sign people, and they come up with some ideas at the business group. And that design had been proposed for them to have a good look at. But he said that really that design will get lost if you, the flag's going to be about, about just the middle portion of that. And if you're travelling at 15 kilometres an hour in a car and it's coming from a distance, you just lose it.
Yeah.
So something like that is,
Yeah.
and there would be more than just the apricot, so it'll be several different fruits. So one flag could have that, and they might repeat it, like every third one might be an apricot, or fourth one might be an apricot, or something like that.
Well, you know, I'm in the apple industry and I feel very
Exactly.
excluded.
Exactly. So there'll be an apple one, a cherry one. It's got to have the right colour and it's got to be the right size to be seen from a distance in a travelling vehicle.
So it seems that we're quite happy for the grant to be transferred.
Yes.
Yes.
And I recommend that we follow the recommendations, A, receive report, accept the level of significance, B, approve that recent committee are able to pass the grant on for it to be used as promotional flag banners as opposed to the light boxes. As per that recommendation, I have a second.
I'll second that.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Carried. Thank you. Right, 25.3.4, reserve funding for the master plan. Bill.
There you go. So obviously, all members will be well aware of this. This is a conversation we've had throughout this training about investing in developing a master plan for the Teviot Valley. So there's obviously a fair bit going on. There's been the spatial plan recently. There'll be the community plans developed throughout this year. There's the redevelopment of the entertainment centre. There's other significant plans such as the play strategy, the open spaces strategy, the economic development strategy. And what the master plan seeks to do is pull these together, but through the lens of the Teviot Valley and looking long term. So how do these things come together and what does investment in the Teviot Valley look like? What are the opportunities? And I think, as Norman has mentioned in the past, not just investment opportunities, but what is it that can activate the Teviot Valley? And that's what this plan would be looking to. We've estimated in here taking $50,000 from the reserve funds, which will leave your reserves still in positive. And it's a request to council because it's coming out of reserves, so we have to request council that they release those reserves. It is only an estimate of cost. Likelihood is, well, actually, I don't know, to be honest, whether it be more or less. Certainly, if you look at master plans that have been developed in the past, such as Cromwell, it was a lot more. I don't think we need to be anything near that level of investment. And if we look at securing some good people, that could be inside the $50,000 budget.
I hope so.
Thank you. You got any questions, Chris?
No, I think, I think like every highlight before is an overall plan for when we do build facilities and how they fit together and making sure everything's fit for purpose and right sized is important. And this will help achieve it.
I'm very much for a master plan, but where does the $50,000 go? Who gets it?
Whoever's going to be building the master plan for us is probably.
And who are they?
Yeah.
Who is it, you know, again, is it a council preferred group of people that you know, council already deals with, or are they consultants, or, you know, where does this master plan?
I think that.
Who does the work? It's your question.
Say that
Who
again.
does the work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, how does-
I think it would be fair to say it is likely to be outsourced to a consultant of some sort, whom we don't know. We have a discussion with the board to find the best fit for what can be delivered, and we do already work.
So, yeah, how many people do this sort of work? I mean.
Oh, look, off the top of my head, there's probably 3 or 4 that we've worked with in recent years to help develop things like the economic development strategy or the destination management plan, or bigger, more complicated things such as the Cromwell master plan. Probably wouldn't go down from my master plan.
No, problems that going.
We're not even, I guess, at that technical level, like often the school type report, which I know Norman put forward earlier, it'd be $500,000. So I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest more of a community-based consultant who's in the region that we've used in the past.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the next step from here, if should we approve it, would be that we would have to try and scope
Correct.
the master plan, you know, as a board.
Yeah.
We would decide what does it look like in our minds as to what part of the master plan is going to look like, what it's got to achieve. Then you'd go to someone that is more aligned or professional, capable to deliver what the board wants.
Right, okay.
And it may be that, drawing what we've got available out of the spatial plan, the open spaces plan, and all those other things that are sitting there as council, work that council has done today, provides 90% of the information that we want, but there might be 10% that still needs to come out of the community.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a lot of information already in the district vision projects.
But, you know, like, we've talked about it. One of the most important things is a coordinated approach, a unified approach for investment in the community.
So, yeah.
Hmm?
Continuum as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 50,000 is a startup, and then we might find that we go, well, that's the core. Now we want to expand that part of it, and that might be another 10, 20, 50. And then we have to debate whether we want to spend more on it or not.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we need something that pulls it all together. And this is the start of it.
Yeah.
And allows us some go forwards to get some visibility to say, here are some projects that we think are really, really important that I've already identified in spatial plan, community plan, and let's get it going. Let's get it drawn up. Because you might find that out of this, say the community plan comes up with 3 good ideas, and then we go, well, that's a good idea. They're going to cost money. What are we going to do about that? But it doesn't fit in with other stuff that we've talked about, you know. So, but you might find, well, we need to spend 5,000 on some research into such and such, and we go, well, that fits in with their approval for a master plan to go and redraw the streets or. I don't know,
Yeah.
You know.
I mean,
Draw a pretty picture. Not suggesting that that's what it'll be. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Master plans are very helpful tools, particularly if there's an opportunity that comes. Regional deals would be an example where actually if there were a master plan, that would be then looked at through a regional deal means and you'd go, well, that's the key thing that actually could be picked up and applied into a regional deal scope. So when opportunities come along, it's great to have a master plan sitting there that you can just pull on and go, okay, that fits with that.
Yeah, no, it makes having a master plan makes sense.
And as a board, it's something we can, you know, it can be our vehicle to other things.
Correct.
You know, because to the count, because probably the outcomes of the anything that's significant in there would still need to be approved by this board, but also by the council.
Yeah.
So we can go to the council, so it's all part of our master plan that you're all aware of. It fits in with that. It's not, you know, out of this world. This is where we want to go. And then there's some funds for this new project, please. Just like other wards have asked for funds for their projects and they've been considered and some have been approved, I presume some have been, you know.
Well, the one I put forward was turned down straight splat, told to get a private partner.
Well, that might be part of it. That could end up being part of it.
Yeah.
You know, the wastage of food in this valley is staggering.
What I would suggest is very similar to the conversation you've just had around the Rock Spring Entertainment Centre is, should you approve this proposal and obviously the council also approves, then I will come back to you with a paper that talks about, okay, how we're actually going to progress this.
In the timeline.
In a timeline.
Yeah.
And how do we get the information from the board about what you want? How do we scope the project? How do we find a consultant who's going to help? So there'll be more to come. This is simply, if you can unlock it, starting.
Yeah.
So it's 50K from the reserve, so that leaves us with what?
We've got about
There's about 450 I think in there, but you've got to balance it with others. So
You just bring up.
you're still quite positive. I think it was in the
Yeah,
200s.
50,000 is fine. I think we last country.
Last next one, 20%.
And some of them, or your bottom line is really good, some of them are like targeted reserves that you only do these specific things. So, just so the board's aware, my team are about to start this project, looking into all the reserves, and we'll be coming to community boards and councils. It's been on the list for like, I think, I'm going to do this since I've been council.
Awesome.
Giving you. So we'll. The numbers questions going to be asked.
So it was
What did
about,
you say, 478?
478 was the closing last year and then projected to close this year at 485. Is that right?
Yes, but then you've got some pluses and minuses in other accounts, so you just got to be aware. that-
Oh, yeah, that's
Because you generally reserve
you wouldn't want
I'm up into that general revenues and development Roxburgh.
But
it.
you're still very much in the positive.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a,
Yes, 7111.
Yeah.
And you'll find you've got is, there's 45, so your bottom line, for the last, balance of 2025 was 723. So
723,
Yeah.
and that's also like some of those are.
Some of those are targeted,
Yeah, some of them you couldn't touch.
Yeah.
What I see is our general revenues and development is 485.
yeah.
It would probably come out of that.
yeah.
Correct, that's the one that would be taken this from.
Okay,
Because it's a lot of money to handle,
Well, it is, and we'll spend it carefully.
and
but these reserves have to be gone down now,
I'm a woman.
No, they can sit there in reserve.
but they're not getting rated for it anymore.
No, that's right. So they've already been rated and they're sitting there.
Yes, they'll be.
Okay, ones. Yeah.
So rated or rated?
Essentially, over time, we've taken some money from our ratepayers accounts.
Yeah.
And it's in our accounts.
Yeah.
So over time, we really should use these reserves.
Yes.
Whether it's decisions like you're about to make on this one, or we use it to offset some rates and things like that. So that would be part of the advice my team's going to work on. Because that 723,000 over many years has come from your residents and from their banks into ours. So it probably should, we need to get a whole lot better. And managing our reserves, then we should not be building our reserves, because we're essentially, that means we're not budgeting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The master plan will help us with that. Because we will identify opportunities to invest.
Yeah.
Like the other question I've got for later on is around the frontage of King George Park. And those are $117,000 that we could allocate that, out of that, if we choose.
Are those reserves for prime interest?
They are, yes, they are.
So
So,
where does that go?
so it goes back into the assigned GL line. So what we've done historically here at council is.
Right, so it stays with the reserve.
Yeah, and some of them are negatives, of course, that are paying interest into other GLs. But overall, Teviot value reserves are healthy. And we have historically, some of our big areas, roading, waters, we've borrowed from rather than the bank, we borrowed from, what was the bank of Cromwell, but they used up all the reserves with them. So yeah, that is something over the next.
So that's
year, we need to really look at the reserves and that.
Then we've got the entertainment.
So
sector.
with something like with reserves, and so the government's not giving any money to councils footpaths, and we've got our old guy down the road chipping off his mobility scooter because of the footpath is so poor. The reserves going to fixing a section of that, for example.
That could be taken to council and decision to council.
Yeah, it's only, yeah.
Yeah, so things like that, I do think, across the whole district, we need to look at all those reserves. So some of them are targeted, you can't touch and like you, willy-nilly kind of thing.
Yeah.
But other ones, like general reserve, like if you have 485,000 sitting there, they can be used for things like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Okay.
So one last thing, reserves, the big picture stuff. So every ward has its own reserves, and then the council has some reserves as well, doesn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Are they actually positive or negative, the council?
Council overall in our district, we're negative. So that's been through this, they've put us into the negative, so not in every Money Trust is the only one that really doesn't have a whole lot of reserves, because the hospital, they're funding now here, or have funded now paying off. Every other community board has, there's some reserves. Council as a whole have gone quite into the negative, but of course now we're using external debt to pay that. And when implementing through what it goes, I think that will make the accounts a lot easier for a lot of that, or pretty much the bulk of that debt is now three waters and the four.
Okay, so I'll move then that the recommendations, will receive the report and accept the level of significance. B, recommend to council that the Teviot Valley General Reserves be made available to develop the master plan for the Teviot Valley. I'll second for that, please.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Carried. 4.3. Item 25.3.5, the First Teviot County bursary. Wayne.
Morning, everyone. Project paper, as, had been read, we received a letter from the council to administer to a county bursary around whether, you would like to, put some money into the pot to make it a bit, more sustainable, sort of moving into the future. So the Teviot bursary is, covers old, sort of the old Roxburgh borough, like down at Chapdolly, down to Lawrence.
Teviot County Council one.
And so there are three community boards, who are representatives on that bursary. This board, Lawrence Teviot community board, and with Target community board. So there was going to be two questions, I suppose, to be asked. A, would you like to consider contributing funds to it? B, how much might that be? However, with the Target community board and Lawrence Teviot community board met, it was the 16th of last month, and they both declined to give any money to the bursary to help it make it more sustainable. So in light of that, I mean, you could either give some money to the cause if you really want, or you could also decline that. That's probably where I haven't put a recommendation in, because it's but I'll probably be leaning towards that way. If the other two boards are saying let's run it down to and put another 10 years or something left in it, then perhaps perhaps this board should do the same.
So option two.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So as a bit of background, I spoke to the author of the letter, Jules Witt, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of the District Council. He wasn't at the respective board meetings, but understands that the initial review of the fund was sparked because it hadn't been done for 9 years, and there was no sort of understanding of what it looked like in the future. So they set up that table that gives you an idea of when it might run out if there was no further contribution. The boards, the West Target board, the Lawrence Teviot have voted against putting any more cash into it today. It doesn't mean to say that they won't look at it again before 2034. It's not the end of the fund by not contributing today. It's just that they've chosen not to contribute to boost the fund now. And he said that they're also considering what other funds are around in each ward for bursaries for tertiary study.
Yeah.
And whether this has served its purpose or not. But we've still got another 9 years to run.
Yeah, anecdotally, I know that Roxburgh have done quite well.
Yeah.
Done quite well.
Mr. Pennant.
But there's nothing, like if you decided, if it was decided that the board was not going to put money into this, could the board decide to still fund local students?
It would be a totally separate discussion, but we can.
So how much of those funds has been ours and how much is,
Sorry?
how much of the funds is from this board and how much
Oh.
at the moment?
I don't even know what
There's a
where the
donation.
funds came from.
Yeah, it would have been when the county council was established. It would have been a
I
fund.
don't think we physically contributed to it.
So I don't know how many.
Right.
So 89?
So if it was, what decision was made, if it's not food anymore, how would they carve it up?
Centralised.
So they've run it down.
This is what they're saying, they're running
Or
down.
just run it down?
Run it down.
Well, it's serving its purpose for incentivising. When you look through the paper that was sent out for the last meeting, the level of, I guess, effort that goes in from the youngsters that are applying for the bursary is quite significant. It's not just
I would
one
suggest,
page.
yeah, I'd suggest that, you know, the three community boards review the decision in a year, because if like last year it got 15 applications and then for the coming year it's 15 applications, clearly it's in demand. So, you know, should be scoped to revisit it reasonably quickly because I know in 10 years time when it's nearly empty, you're not going to do it then because you're going to, you know what I mean?
I mean, and I guess one of the things that has been a little bit lacking from the Teviot Valley community boards input to the trust is that we might have someone that's attended the meeting.
Well, Russell won't go.
No, they went to one, but that was about it. Now, and now that, of course, that ban has been passed to Curtis and.
I did miss the Sutherland had a conflict, that clash on.
Yeah, but we've got a stronger representation, is what I'm saying. According to the conversation I had with Jules, he said that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Having 2 out of 3 players at the table, there's only 3 players, makes it hard work.
So just with the financial consideration, because it's unbudgeted and it has to be put in the deliberations for the long-term plan, why can't it be funded from the reserve, our reserves?
Sorry.
I would make it fun. I think in theory we could. Curtis's question was, could it be funded through the reserves? The
two
topping up the two big.
Yeah. Anything was this?
So in a year's time, if you suggest when you go to the next trust meeting that they review it, we have the ability to contribute.
Because we just had a conversation about utilising our reserves.
Yep, not raising your community.
Yeah,
You've got money there.
yeah.
So how does it go if they've decided to draw out of it and we decide to stay in it?
Well, that is one option, is we could go for the lower amount and hope that spurs action from them in a year. We most likely won't.
Well, they've taken their decision for this year.
Yes, but it might spur, for this review, how often are the reviews?
Well, that's up to the trust.
Right.
So if we say no for this year in line with them and then at the next annual meeting, try and knit it back together again
Yeah, that's
in a year's time, that's what you.
the importance of having someone like Curtis sitting on that trust. Whereas in the past we've had Sally do it for until 22, and then Russell took away.
Yeah. So it'll just sleep for a year.
No, they'll still dole it out. It's just, it's gonna be a declining fund until the community boards decide to keep it declining or keep it going.
Certainly in a reply to concept, we could say, you know, if you were to define it today, we're defining it today, but you're certainly open to having a discussion.
And even knowing that 15 applicants last year, if that was, you know, if you'd have had double digit applicants each year, it should be reviewed.
But wasn't it 2 applicants the year before?
Yes, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It depends on what.
Yeah.
I think it was 15 or 11 or something like that last year.
Tertiary studies not getting cheaper.
No, and that's the other thing we've got to be.
So that's also, as far as students go. I guess if there'll be a number of folk who are looking for opportunities like that, because it just costs so much of the tertiary study.
And there's Peter said to them before in dollar counts for university. Okay, so option 2 is to decline this year. There's Wayne suggested that in our communications we promote the fact that we're still interested in the fund operating and would reconsider the contribution should the trust believe that that's the appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
We keep it open.
In line with that,
We have to put you, sorry.
I don't think it's right in the resolution.
Okay,
We'll just do that.
just note it in the minutes.
And when we send it back to Clutha, we'll just note that it's not a no forever, it's a no for right now. And
Well, we'd like to see alignment with other community boards.
yes, yeah.
Right, okay, so recommendations are that we receive the report and decide whether to contribute or not. We've chosen to run with option 2. Can I have a second to that motion, please?
I'll second that.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Carry. Oh, we didn't acknowledge the apologies from Peter or.
Don't need to form.
There's no media report today, the chair report. Okay, just to start off with, I'd like to thank staff and my fellow members for their attendance to the LTP forums, the information sharing and the Q&A. Personally, I was away for the first 2 of them, the one at Miller's Flat and the one at Roxburgh. I was surprised at the low turnout. I mean, I hear there were 40 odd people at Miller's Flat, but numbers dwindled quite rapidly when it came to the Roxburgh.
It's just you and me, Mark, wasn't it?
It was a bit light.
Which, I mean, that's a responsibility of the community rather than us. Yeah, so I've had a lot of people comment on or ask questions about water rates and rate increases and so forth, but for them not to show to those information sharing meetings is a little perplexing. I attended the Dawn Parade here in Roxburgh and had the privilege of hearing Peter Kelly speak. as a guest speaker for that, and I'd like to thank him for making that effort to do that, give a little background and, his current role as CEO of the CODC. I want to talk a little bit about the poll, and it might inspire some discussion around the table, which there seems to be an increasing level of discomfort amongst the community around the passing over of the asset, and I think that a lot of it has come about by the lack of consultation between the committee and the community, and the ability for the community being given the ability to understand the full impact of the passing of the asset. And given that, you know, we're talking about a rates increase of $312 plus, depending which way you look at it, on top of the other rate increases that we're faced with. So I'm just wondering, is a group of 4 or 5 people that would stand up and say that they will contribute to the operation of the plant, and how we go about doing that, and relaying that back into the LTP process. Mark, I understand you've got a submission that you sort of drafted.
Yeah, I've been concerned that if we do, if this does happen, and as you said, it seems to have slid under the radar a little bit. It's sort of all of a sudden it's there, you know, it came as a bit of a surprise when I saw it in the draft LTP figures that all of a sudden the pool's going to get divested. I was like, wow, how do we know about this? But so,
Like we did get the opportunity for it to say whether or not it got considered in the LTP process in December.
Yeah, but I mean,
the numbers,
like I say, even then it was like, oh, so what's the problem? It wasn't like, can we have some community input to help us with this problem that we have? We didn't know there was a problem.
But we had that meeting in the hall here that was really well attended, when people voted about the poll and the rates, wasn't it?
So afterwards, yeah. That was
after
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'd really like to avoid everyone in this community having to pay an extra $300 and something in their rates, forever. It's not just for this year; it's forever. And it's going to go up each year. So if it was to go ahead as proposed, then every ratepayer is going to have to pay 300 and.
So you want to read out your submission that you've drafted, because one of the things that we can decide upon today is whether we submit that collectively as a board position. So you still
have you got several copies?
She's report right now. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. That's mine has reported as on. Yeah.
So there's that, and I guess in general the understanding that has, alongside the poll, with the understanding of I guess individuals, the impact on the individual ratepayer of the volumetric water rates is quite significant. And I don't know whether people will be able to line themselves up with consumption versus $2.40.
Yeah.
As opposed to 60 cents.
It's important to note that if on the rates calculator, the volumetric, if you type in your address, the volumetric charge isn't actually on the rates calculator, that's additional to your rate bill.
Right,
So people will really have got the increase
yeah,
for rates with the increased volumetric charges outside of that. So it's going to be a big number for some people.
yeah,
And to be honest, with the council drop-on sessions, and we're talking about V8 supercars and grass, but we weren't talking about what was going on with water. So we never got to the nitty gritty of where people are going to be hit in the pocket. And again, too, that's the feedback that I get. You go to these meetings, but you never quite get the essence of what's happening. You get all the peripheral, but not the essence. And people are starting to get really worried about this water because when the infrastructure went in and people started paying for it in Roxburgh, they were paying for the infrastructure. They weren't paying for the water and the pipes. Now they're paying for both.
Yeah, but from what I've been told, from what I understand is that the design is that, or the result of this proposal will be that the cost to 95% of Roxburgh residents will go down, and the cost to some people who are big users will go up overall.
That's so.
That's the way we model.
Essentially, the theory might not quite be known.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that comes from.
Yeah,
But
that's a guess.
the modelling shows 8% of the population uses 40% of the water.
Yeah.
So there's a few people using it of water,
Yeah.
which everyone currently is paying for. So the way this is intended to work is that essentially those that are using a lot of water will be penalised for using a lot of water by paying more, but your annual connection charge that brings water to your property, that cost will reduce.
Yeah.
So if you're a low user, you should actually see a reduction.
So this is nudging people into using less and less water, even though,
Well, so one of the outcomes would
we
be
don't know why people use a lot of water, but maybe they've got the families or, there's.
quite possibly, but one of the outcomes is also that it delays the investment in future infrastructure. But what happened during the introduction of water metering was there was a reduction of about 30% of water usage, which delays the investment in future water infrastructure, which is important because if we continue to invest at the rate we're having to at the moment because of the water usage, actually that's going to be more on the current rate pay.
So obviously the ratepayer will be, well, not obviously, but I suspect the ratepayer will be suspicious as to, what's happening with the total take. So is the total water rates take going to increase because of this skewing of the arithmetic, or is it going to stay the same?
Ask my colleague in finance.
so, sorry, to interrupt, just going back to my chair's report. My concern is that the level of understanding.
Yeah, I agree.
Amongst the ratepayers.
Yeah.
Around the impact and the rationale for changing from 60 cents a unit to $2.40 is skewed in the wrong direction. They need to understand, and be encouraged to understand that they do drive their own destiny with their water bill. And having, as Dylan's just described it, the ability to manage that rate, the water charges, was going to be a benefit to 90% of it. So that message hasn't got across, is what I'm saying. And there I will end my chair's report. Yeah.
Now what are we going to talk about?
Good. I didn't move, but that be accepted. Can I have a second, please?
Yeah.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Those against say no. Carry. Members' reports. First.
Cool. Attended both long-term plan evening sessions in Millstone and Roxburgh. Two quite different meetings. I would say there's a fairly energised crowd at Millstone around specifically the rate rise, given they're probably one of the worst affected towns in the district, and just a general flowing on from what Norm was talking about. I suppose a bewilderment that there's not a community solution to the Roxburgh pool, given that they will then be paying for Roxburgh pool whilst maintaining and running their own pool, and they sort of don't see how Roxburgh can't have a system like Millerslip. Was a vocal theme there. The other thing, and given it was in the hall, people were there to share their thoughts on. There's a lot of strong thoughts on the Millerslip Hall being up for divestment. And although, given the event on my penny day in Roxburgh, it's probably more of a sure thing than not. People would like to see that the two are separated, that Millerslip Hall's retained, and I know this is a view of the Hall Committee, and they've done a great submission on this, but that the Millerslip Hall was retained in its own right, not because Roxburgh hasn't got a hall or the events they have in Roxburgh, and so they want a bit more. They just would like that the decisions viewed with the Roxburgh, what happened in Roxburgh, put to the side, and Millerslip Hall viewed on its own merits, which everyone believes are pretty strong. The thank you to, I've been talking with Quinton at the roading team and his team, as well as Ford and Hogan, for a major repair job they did on Timberburn Road. The road was shut for 3 weeks above a bridge. And although it's only a small number of people that live above it, it's just an important link for commerce out of the area.
Has it been done?
Yeah, it's been done. But it's just important to know that although it's only affects the lives of a handful of people above it, it is quite vital in terms of the, millions of dollars of product that need to flow over a small bridge like that. So thank you to them. And just attended an irrigation company meeting and a water group meeting around native plantings. But yeah, just following on around the Roxburgh pool, people are becoming more and more aware now that the numbers are out there on what the consequence truly is of what's proposed in the long-term plan. And especially with the distritisation side of it, like we're very fortunate at the minute. We don't chip in for any pools. And so we're sheltered from any future increase operating cost of any pool in Central Otago with our current model.
Apart from
Millerslip Roxburgh if they're operating grants. But if that were to change, or option A in the long-term plan was to be chosen, we would then be in for all pools, all upgrade, all future expenditure on pools in Central Otago. So people are just realising that comes with council taking on this pool means we're part of the pool for all pools, if that makes sense. And as I said, following on from what Mark said, this came forward in December. It's February before we probably knew the figures, and it hasn't even had a full off-season winter and the time that elapses in winter when everything's a bit quieter for the community to come forward with the solution. And that's about it. That's just, Millerslip and south of Roxburgh and outside of Roxburgh are pretty vocal about this. Like they're pretty fired up about why Roxburgh needs the council to run their pool, and they've got a perfect model down there. And when they're lumped with the rate increase that goes with it.
Thank you.
Okay, so this last 6 weeks, I've been to some of the long-term plan community meetings. I won't repeat what Curtis said about the Millerslip one, but there's certainly some fairly strong feelings there with a 28% rates rise for most people. I've been to the business breakfast meeting, went to an Anzac Day wreath meeting, and some Millerslip community coffee meetings. Again, people there are pretty upset about the 28% rates rise coming to them. The rates rise is almost, a huge portion of that relates to swimming pool, because their rates, if their rates, they have their own water and they have their own sewerage. So if their rates was say 2,500, you know, they're getting $330 on top of that, which is a huge, you know, huge increase.
And some of the rates in North State aren't even $2,000 at least.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're getting $330 on top of 2,000, it's massive. Just for a pool that you're never going to use because you're already paying for your own pool. Yeah. Anyway, just moving temporarily to one other thing, and that is the Miller's Flat Bowling Club Pavilion. So I've been to a couple of meetings with that. I'm on that committee, as you know, and we've submitted 2 funding requests since the last meeting, where the thing was approved to go ahead in terms of putting the facility on the council on the Miller's Flat domain. We've submitted 2 funding requests to CLT and OCT, and we await their approval or disapproval, which will come through late June. And then pending that, we will submit the final request, which is to lotteries. We'll submit that in late June, and we'll get an answer in sometime in September. At that point, as a stop-go point, we get the money, we can go ahead. If we don't get the money, or we only get half the money, we'll have a refund. So that's where that's at. As part of that, or not as part of the Sports and Recreation Hub proposal, outside of that is the Miller's Flat Bowling Club Pavilion. And we deliberately left that out of that proposal because we knew the pavilion was a cloudy issue and was going to take a wee while. Also, the council didn't know, when the council was starting to put the long-term plan together in talking about divestment of buildings, they didn't know that we had this project bubbling away that may potentially use get benefit from using the pavilion. So we are going to submit in terms of that pavilion to say that we would certainly like the opportunity to discuss usage and lease of that building. It's not essential to the project by any means, but if we could use it, it would be used as a sun deck for spectators watching tennis, pickleball, netball, changing rooms and toilets when we have pre-planned events, not just as a public changing rooms, but when we have pre-planned events, which we are planning to do quite a lot of. Same for kitchen, cups of tea and provision of light food on when there's tournament days or special events. The maintenance sheds, however, we would want to use all the time for storing equipment and gear. And the main pavilion hall, again, potentially might get used for pre-planned events related to the sports stuff there, not for just general usage, but sports stuff. So we'd like to, I'll be submitting that we'd like to discuss using a lease, having lease, and having whatever needs to be done to the sump and the retaining wall, which we believe is not. When I heard about a retaining wall needing to be fixed, I go, oh my God. But I've had some chats with various people, and it's not that big an issue to refix the retaining wall. That's not a big deal, but it needs to be done. But with that in mind, we're going to propose that the divestment of the pavilion be deferred until potential lease has been considered, or until the next long-term plan in 2 years' time. I don't know if there'll be many other people submitting on the Miller's Flat Bowling Club Pavilion, but that's what we're doing.
So what happens if we go through the LTP process and the pavilion is identified as one of those buildings that has divested, and then the Miller's Flat other people come along and say, hang on a minute, we'd like to lease it. What's the opportunity of it being retained?
Well, that'll be a decision for council to work through. So
they will consider it. It's not like,
yeah. And in the past, things have gone through. I used the example in the past of the museum proposal that went through the last LTP. Well, actually, a group subsequent to the LTP came back with an alternative solution, which the council took on.
So it's not fait accompli once it's been considered, the council's really up to the process.
No, you'll,
So it does need to come through the submission process, so that museum group did actually submit as part of the LGP.
Yeah.
During the deliberations, council, they said actually there's a real value in their suggestion, the suggestion, so that was actually part of the process. But of course, council can change any one of their decisions, so they, to Dylan's point, even if it gets decided X way now,
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking, is that,
it just makes it very, say, we take, like the pool, for example, can be quite challenging to undo, so whether or not council would decide to reverse a decision of these would be the political risk.
but if the that's probably,
it's clean.
So in the depths of the long-term plan, there's a 3-pager on the Municipal Club as such, and it says that options if divested is, and there's 4 options, 2 of which have got a potential tick by them and 2 have not. And sell on the open market is not ticked. Return to the Crown or offer to Ngāi Tahu is not ticked. But the 2 things that are ticked that could happen, options if divested, are 1, lease to a community group, and secondly, demolish and repurpose the site.
okay.
So hopefully we can, in parallel with the LTP, make some submissions and get towards a mutually acceptable management proposal and lease proposal.
Mhm.
So that's that one. And then the other one that we have been discussing in your report, Norm, was the pool. So yeah, I'm surprised that it's come to this, and listening to various people around the town have contacted me and said, well, is there any way we can fade this? I've had quite a few conversations with people. I've tried to sort of put that together and say, well, maybe, but without knowing all of the detail about how the pool is run, it's pretty hard to say, yeah, we can do it. So I think we need a little bit of time, but the idea is that we want to avoid having to pay everyone in the community having to pay $320 extra every year, plus inflationary increases over the future, for because the pool goes into council ownership and management. So if we can avoid that, that would be good. What we do want to have is a functionally running pool that's available for members of the community. And hopefully the two problems that I understand at the moment is that the committee have been working tirelessly for 10, 20 years and have just had enough. And they've been looking for extra members and they haven't come forwards. And so what I'm proposing in this paper is that there are some people that would put their hand up and that be considered. And then that new committee with some of the old members and some fresh blood can come up with some fresh ideas and a fresh viewpoint from the outside and go, hey, what about this? Could we do that? Could we do the other? That will allow the current committee members who've done a fantastic job and basically stayed on to get the funding and get the delivery of the pool built. They can be thanked and they can, with relief, excuse themselves from further pressure. And a new committee could then say, look, let's have a really good look at this and see how we can achieve what needs to be achieved, which is swimming for everybody. Bear in mind that the total revenue for this pool at the moment is about 15,000, 16,000 a year. So it's not very high. So I know that pools historically run as a loss, but we'd have to be very careful in terms of what solution might be proposed to support that 15,000 of revenue on a $3 million asset. So yeah, I've put a proposal here which I'm sort of thinking about, and if we can subcontract a lifesaver from the pool with the pool of people that the council have, that would certainly help. So at the moment we don't have the full set of figures for a year yet. We've got little snippets of figures. Be good to have a look at those, and then we can come up with a coherent proposal. But at the moment, we don't seem to have that information. I mean, if we don't do it, then you'd be facing a winding up of the society, I presume, of the that runs it, and the assets transferred. Don't know how that will affect trust funds have just given a lot of money to the pool. Anyway, that's what I'd like to see happen, is that we get the opportunity to do that. But I would also say that when the council would be considering these proposals, they should put 95% of weighting onto what the Roxburgh community want, and not really pay too much attention to what happens to the people from the outside who are in the rest of Central Otago, because there isn't much financial impact on them at all. In fact, it's a financial benefit to them. It reduces their rates increase if this happens. So, you know, it should be thinking of the impact on this community, not on the bigger picture.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, it was like Mark and Curtis have been attended two of the long-term plan meetings. Now, because I'm full noise in our work situation, I didn't get to the medical trust meeting, but they are going ahead with, you know, the windows and the heating and getting that sorted out. That's a really good, they've got that pretty much under control. Now, I'd just like to give a bit of a shout out to old Earl at Ettrick, who has done a wonderful job of cleaning up all the footpaths, and I'm sure he'll get rewarded with another pair of red bands, because that's what he got last time. So he's just trimmed back all the grass verges, clean the footpaths so that you can see the concrete again, and he's put in some seriously solid volunteering work for that. So I'd like to thank him for that publicly, basically. He's done a great job. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move that those reports be received. We have a second of them.
Yep.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Carry. Government report.
Not a lot on there, just two to be closed off.
Has anyone got anything they want to raise in around the status reports? Usually just do it by exception rather than going through each and every. That goes a no, so just follow the recommendation that we receive that report and acknowledge its level of significance. Have a seconder, please.
Right.
And all those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Carry. Date of the next meeting, 12th of June. Now, we did talk about whether that was going to go ahead, didn't we?
Yeah, we've got two holidays.
Because Mark and I are both away for the whole of June.
On the way the day after that,
So do we move it or do we not have it?
I can still make the 12th, but I can't make any later day.
Yeah.
If there's currently no papers, are there?
No, there are no papers.
Still no papers.
So we could cancel that one, but it doesn't mean to say that we couldn't put another one in. It was from business permit.
So the
At the time that's convenient for everyone.
So we're talking the 31st of July is the one following.
We're going to be having community work evening.
And that's tied in with the,
Steering group.
Yeah.
so we can't really.
So we can have one in the first week of July if everyone's around. Otherwise, just rely on the 31st of July.
Yeah, given you've got one
If there's no-
31st of July,
Yeah.
it's more than nice to have it learn a few weeks, but
Yeah,
wouldn't be much.
You want to just have a casual
well, we can do it in the first week of
in the
July.
first week of July, yeah.
We should be getting together anyway, both around the REC.
We'll just let you acclimatise to the cold again for the first week.
Just related valley.
We don't need to make a firm decision there. We can-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm back on the seventh,
Well, you're back
Monday.
soon.
Monday, the seventh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no point, I mean, if we could have a meeting via Zoom, you know, if there was something that really came up, but I don't think international Zoom meet, the last time I tried to use it, there was levels of security, Wayne,
Yeah, it was there.
stopped it happening.
Yeah. Okay, so,
It is, but I can work through, and we'll just confirm cancellation.
Okay.
Is there such a thing as a meeting by email? You know, like where you can say, here's the paper, can you vote on that?
Not on a meeting, we're going, no.
Instead of Zoom, what about Teams?
It's all Teams anyway.
Same.
That's on Teams.
yeah.
But
Okay,
if
so,
something crops up, can you somehow email us all and say, we need you to vote on this?
No,
No, you can't.
no, but an extraordinary meeting called. And it can be done pretty
Yes,
quick.
please, yeah, the closed meeting, then I've got a separate, I'm not gonna get with you. Follow?